The bright lights above me were so white they hurt my eyes. I could hear the beep, beep, beep of machines all around me. My heart was beating so fast, I thought it might jump right out of my chest. "Mrs. Grace, we're going to start the anesthesia now," the doctor said softly. "Count backwards from 10 for me." I opened my mouth to say 10, but no words came out. Something felt wrong. Very wrong. But it was too late to stop now, wasn't it? My son David was dying. He needed my kidney to live. If you're enjoying this story, please like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear this message, and don't forget to subscribe for more incredible true stories that will shock you. 10-9. I whispered, but my voice was shaking. "Let me tell you how I got here, lying on this cold table, about to give away a part of myself. Maybe then you'll understand why every fiber in my body was screaming that something was terribly, horribly wrong. It all started 3 months ago. I was in my garden, planting tomatoes, when my phone rang. It was Sarah, my daughter-in-law, David's wife. "Grace, you need to come to the hospital right now," she said, and I could hear she was crying. "It's David. He's really sick." I dropped my gardening gloves and ran to my car. My hands were shaking so badly, I could barely start the engine. David was my oldest son, my firstborn. The thought of losing him made my stomach feel like it was full of ice. When I got to the hospital, Sarah was pacing back and forth in the hallway. Her eyes were red and puffy from crying. She grabbed my hands the moment she saw me. "The doctors say his kidneys are failing," she whispered. "They don't know why. He was fine last week, Grace. He was perfectly fine." I felt the world spinning around me. "How can that be? He's only 35 years old." "They're running more tests," Sarah said, squeezing my hands tighter. "But Grace, they said he might need a kidney transplant." The next few weeks were like living in a nightmare. David got sicker and sicker. His skin turned yellow. He couldn't eat. He was so weak he could barely lift his head from the pillow. My strong, healthy son was disappearing before my eyes. Sarah barely left his side. She brought him special soups and made sure he took all his medicines. She seemed like the perfect wife, caring for her sick husband. I should have been grateful. I should have seen how devoted she was. But something kept bothering me. Something I couldn't put my finger on. Maybe it was the way Sarah's parents, Mr. and Mrs. Johnson, kept showing up at the hospital with serious faces and whispering in corners. They would stop talking whenever I came near, which made my skin crawl with worry. Maybe it was how Sarah always seemed to know exactly what the doctors were going to say before they said it. Like, she had rehearsed their conversations. Or maybe it was how my grandson Tommy, David's 9-year-old son from his first marriage, kept trying to tell me something but could never finish his sentences. Every time he started to speak, Sarah would interrupt him or send him away to play. "Grandma Grace," he would start to say, his big brown eyes looking worried. "About Daddy's medicine?" "Tommy, don't bother Grandma with silly questions," Sarah would cut in quickly. "Go wash your hands for dinner." But the doctors said David was running out of time. His kidney function was getting worse every day. They put him on the transplant list, but the wait could be months or even years. He didn't have that long. That's when Sarah came to me with tears in her eyes. "Grace," she said, taking my hands in hers. "The doctors said family members can donate kidneys. They said you might be a match for David." My heart stopped. Give away one of my kidneys? At 67 years old? "I know it's a lot to ask," Sarah continued, her voice breaking. "But you're his mother. You're the only one who can save him." I looked at my son lying in that hospital bed, so pale and thin. Of course I would do anything to save him. What mother wouldn't? The tests showed I was a perfect match. Perfect. The doctor said the surgery would be risky because of my age, but David's need was urgent. Sarah cried with relief. "Oh, Grace, you're an angel. You're going to save his life." But her parents, the Johnsons, had strange reactions. Instead of looking happy, they looked nervous, excited. I couldn't tell which. They kept exchanging glances and whispering to each other. My younger son, Michael, wasn't happy about the surgery at all. "Mom, this is dangerous," he said, grabbing my arm. "You're not a young woman anymore. What if something goes wrong?" David will die without this kidney, I told him firmly. I'm his mother. This is what mothers do. But Michael kept shaking his head. Something doesn't feel right about this whole situation, Mom. David was healthy 3 months ago. Kidney failure doesn't just happen overnight like this. You're being paranoid, Sarah snapped at him. Your brother is dying, and you're worried about conspiracy theories? Michael backed down, but I could see the worry in his eyes. And honestly, deep in my heart, I was worried too. The night before the surgery, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Tommy and how he always seemed to want to tell me something important. I thought about Sarah's parents and their whispered conversations. I thought about how quickly David had gotten sick. But every time doubt crept into my mind, I would look at David lying there so helpless, and I knew I had to go through with it.
He was my son.
My baby. I would give him anything. Now here I was on the operating table, counting backwards from 10, 8, 7. The anesthesia was making me feel sleepy and strange. The room started to get fuzzy around the edges. 6, 5. That's when I heard shouting in the hallway. Loud, urgent shouting. 4, 3. The shouting was getting closer. Someone was running down the hall. 2. The operating room doors burst open with a loud bang.
Stop.
Stop the surgery, a small voice screamed. Don't let them take Grandma's kidney. Through my sleepy, medicine-clouded vision, I saw a small figure running toward me. It was Tommy. My 9-year-old grandson was racing into the operating room, waving something in his hand. Tommy has been poisoning Daddy, he shouted, his voice echoing off the walls. Sarah has been making him sick on purpose. The last thing I remember before everything went black was the sound of machines beeping frantically and people shouting all around me. My grandson had just accused his stepmother of trying to murder his father. And I was about to find out he was absolutely, terrifyingly right. I woke up confused and dizzy. The bright surgery lights were still shining down on me, but something was different. Very different. Doctors and nurses were running around like crazy. Someone was shouting orders. Machines were beeping loud warning sounds. And in the middle of all this chaos, I could hear a small, brave voice that made my heart jump. I'm telling the truth. Sarah has been making my daddy sick. Tommy, my grandson, was still there, standing next to my bed like a tiny soldier. His face was red from crying, but his voice was strong and clear. Young man, you cannot be in here, a nurse said, trying to grab Tommy's arm. This is a sterile operating room. No, Tommy shouted, pulling away from her. I have to show Grandma Grace. I have proof. My head was spinning from the medicine, but I forced myself to focus. Tommy? I whispered. What proof? Dr. Martinez, the surgeon, came over to me with worried eyes. Mrs. Grace, we've stopped the surgery. Your grandson ran in here, making some very serious accusations. We need to understand what's happening before we continue. Tommy climbed up on a small stool next to my bed. His hands were shaking, but he was holding something tight against his chest. It looked like his tablet computer. Grandma, I've been watching Sarah for weeks, Tommy said, his words tumbling out fast. She's been giving Daddy medicine that's not from the doctor. Bad medicine. Medicine that makes him sicker? Sarah suddenly appeared at the foot of my bed. Her face was white as paper, and her hands were shaking. Tommy, sweetie, you're confused. You're just scared about Daddy being sick. I'm not confused, Tommy shouted back. I saw you. I recorded you. My heart nearly stopped. You recorded her? Tommy nodded fast. With my tablet. I was playing games in Daddy's room, and I heard Sarah talking on the phone. She thought I couldn't hear her, but I could. And I recorded everything. Sarah took a step forward, her voice getting higher and more panicked. Tommy, honey, you misunderstood what you heard. Sometimes grown-ups talk about complicated things that kids don't understand. I understand poison, Tommy said, his voice getting louder. I understand when someone says give him more pills and make sure he gets worse, and the old lady better give us her kidney soon. The whole room went dead silent. Even the machines seemed quieter. I felt like someone had poured ice water into my veins. Tommy, I whispered, What exactly did you hear? Tommy's hands were shaking as he held up his tablet. Sarah was talking to her mom and dad on the phone 3 days ago. I was under Daddy's hospital bed playing my game, and she didn't see me there. Sarah was backing toward the door now, her face getting more and more pale. This is ridiculous. A 9-year-old child is making up stories, and you're all listening to him? I'm not making it up. Tommy's voice cracked, but he kept going. I heard Sarah say David is getting suspicious about the pills, and then her mom said, "We need that kidney soon, or the whole plan falls apart." Dr. Martinez looked shocked. What pills, Tommy? What kind of pills? Tommy wiped his nose with his sleeve. The little white ones that Sarah gives Daddy every night. She says they're from the doctor, but I saw her hide them in her purse. And they don't have the hospital label on them like all the other medicines do. My mind was racing, trying to make sense of what I was hearing. Sarah, I said, my voice shaking. Is this true? Of course it's not true. Sarah snapped, but she was sweating now. Grace, you're listening to a child. A confused, scared child who's making up stories because he doesn't understand what's happening to his father. But Tommy wasn't finished. He pressed something on his tablet screen. I can prove it. I recorded her talking to someone yesterday, too. Listen. A scratchy voice came from the tablet speakers. It was definitely Sarah's voice, but she sounded different. Colder. Meaner. The old woman is scheduled for surgery tomorrow morning, the recording said. Once we get her kidney, we can stop giving David the medicine and he'll recover. Everyone will think the transplant saved him. Another voice came through the speaker, an older woman. What if she changes her mind? What if she gets suspicious? She won't, Sarah's recorded voice replied. She's too much of a good mother. She'd give her life for her precious son. Besides, it's too late now. David will die without the surgery, and she knows it. The room was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. My heart was beating so loud, I thought everyone could hear it. That can't be real, I whispered, but even as I said it, I knew it was. Everything I had been feeling, all those little warning bells in my head, suddenly made perfect sense. Dr. Martinez looked at Sarah with hard eyes. Mrs. Sarah, I think we need to call security and have a serious conversation. This is insane, Sarah screamed. You're going to let a child's imagination destroy a family? Grace, you know me. You know I love David. I would never hurt him, but I was remembering things now. How Sarah always insisted on giving David his nighttime medicine herself. How she got angry when the nurses tried to check what pills she was giving him. How David always seemed worse in the mornings after Sarah had been with him all night. Tommy climbed closer to me on the bed. Grandma Grace, there's more. Sarah's mom and dad aren't just visiting because Daddy's sick. They're part of it too. I heard them talking about money. Lots and lots of money. What money, sweetheart? I asked, even though I was scared to hear the answer. They keep talking about how much money they'll make when they sell. Tommy paused, looking confused. When they sell something from the lab tests on Daddy. I don't understand what that means, but they sound really excited about it. My blood turned to ice. Lab tests. Were they using my son as some kind of experiment? Sarah was frantically shaking her head. This is all lies. All of it. Tommy is a troubled child who watches too much TV. Grace, please. David is dying. We don't have time for these crazy stories. But Dr. Martinez was already picking up the phone. Security 2 or 3 immediately. And I want the police called.
Now.
No, Sarah shouted, lunging toward Tommy's tablet. You can't listen to this. It's not what you think. But Tommy was too quick. He jumped behind me on the bed, holding his tablet high in the air. I have more recordings, he shouted. I recorded them talking about giving Daddy different pills to make his blood tests look worse. And I recorded Sarah's dad bringing her packages from somewhere called the research facility. Sarah stopped moving. Her face went from white to gray, and she looked like she might throw up. That's when I knew, with horrible certainty, that every word my brave little grandson was saying was true. My daughter-in-law, the woman I had welcomed into our family, had been slowly poisoning my son. And I had almost given her exactly what she wanted, my kidney and probably my life. Tommy, I whispered, reaching for his small hand. Tell me everything. Tell me every single thing you heard and saw. Because suddenly, stopping this surgery wasn't enough. We needed to save David's life, catch the people who were trying to kill him, and make sure they never hurt anyone else ever again. The real fight was just beginning. Security guards filled the operating room within minutes. Sarah was crying and screaming, but they wouldn't let her leave. Dr. Martinez had moved me to a recovery room where I could think clearly without all the surgery medicine making me dizzy. Tommy sat next to me on the bed, still clutching his tablet like it was the most important thing in the world. And maybe it was. Tommy, you are the bravest boy I have ever known, I told him, smoothing down his messy hair. But I need you to tell me everything from the beginning.
Can you do that?
He nodded, wiping his eyes with his sleeve. It started about 2 months ago, Grandma. I noticed that Daddy always felt worse after Sarah gave him his nighttime medicine. My younger son, Michael, rushed into the room just then. His face was red and he was breathing hard, like he had been running.
Mom.
I got your message. What's happening? They said the surgery was stopped and... He stopped talking when he saw Tommy. Hey, buddy, what are you doing here? Uncle Michael, Tommy said in a small voice. I think Sarah has been trying to kill my daddy. Michael's mouth dropped open. He looked at me, then back at Tommy, then at me again. What? I quickly told Michael everything that had happened. About Tommy's recordings, about the unmarked pills, about the conversations he had overheard. With every word I spoke, Michael's face got more and more angry. I knew something was wrong, Michael said, hitting his fist against the wall. I've been saying this for weeks. David was perfectly healthy and then suddenly he's dying? It doesn't make sense. Uncle Michael, will you help me prove it? Tommy asked. I have the recordings, but I think there's more evidence in Daddy's room. Michael knelt down next to Tommy. You bet I'll help you, buddy. What do you need me to do? Tommy pulled up a list on his tablet. He had been thinking about this like a real detective. I need someone to take pictures of the pills Sarah gives Daddy. And I want to follow Sarah's parents when they leave the hospital. I saw them talking to a man in the parking garage yesterday, and he gave them a package. Tommy, I said, amazed, how long have you been watching all of this? Ever since Daddy got sick, Tommy said quietly. I knew something was wrong, but nobody would listen to me. Every time I tried to tell you or Uncle Michael, Sarah would interrupt or send me away. Michael was already pulling out his phone. I'm calling my friend Jake. He's a private investigator. If there's evidence to find, he'll find it. Wait, I said, grabbing Michael's arm. What about David? We need to tell him what's happening. Tommy shook his head sadly. We can't tell Daddy yet, Grandma. He loves Sarah so much, he won't believe us. And if Sarah finds out that we know, she might do something even worse to him. This little boy was thinking more clearly than any of us adults. You're right, sweetheart. So what do? We get proof that nobody can argue with, Tommy said, sounding much older than 9 years old. Uncle Michael, can you go to Daddy's room and take pictures of all his medicines? I'll show you which ones are from the hospital and which ones Sarah brings. On it, Michael said. What else? Tommy scrolled through more recordings on his tablet. I recorded Sarah's dad talking about meeting someone at something called Zenith Research Labs tonight at 8 o'clock. He said they need to finalize the kidney deal before anyone gets suspicious. My blood went cold. Kidney deal? I think they're not just poisoning Daddy, Tommy said, his voice getting very quiet. I think they're planning to sell your kidney, Grandma. And maybe other people's kidneys too. Michael stood up, so fast his chair fell over. Mom, this isn't just about David. This sounds like some kind of organ trafficking ring. The words hit me like a punch to the stomach. Organ trafficking. They weren't just trying to hurt my family, they were part of something much bigger and more dangerous. Tommy, play that recording again, I said. The one from last night. Tommy found the file and pressed play. Sarah's voice filled the room again, but this time I was listening for different things. The test results show the experimental drug is working perfectly, Sarah's recorded voice said. David's kidney function has dropped exactly as predicted. The research team will have all the data they need by the end of the week. Another voice, Sarah's mother, replied, "And you're sure the old woman will go through with the donation?" "She's desperate to save her precious son," Sarah laughed coldly. "She'd cut out both kidneys if I asked her to. The research facility is paying us $50,000 for the kidney, plus another $20,000 for all the test data from David's blood work." I felt sick to my stomach. They were selling my kidney? For money. Tommy nodded sadly. And using Daddy like a science experiment. Michael was pacing back and forth like a caged animal. "We need to call the police right now." "We will," I said, "but first we need more evidence. If Sarah and her parents are part of something this big, they probably have lawyers and ways to make evidence disappear." Just then, Tommy's tablet beeped. He looked at the screen, and his eyes got wide. "Grandma." Sarah's dad just sent a text message. Tommy had somehow figured out how to intercept text messages. This boy was a genius. He showed me the screen. The message read, "Surgery stopped.
Kid knows something. Meet at lab now.
Bring backup plan." "Backup plan?" Michael asked. "What backup plan?" Tommy was already pulling up another recording. "I think I know. Listen to this one from yesterday." A man's voice came through the speaker, Sarah's father. "If the kidney donation falls through, we move to Plan B. The woman has to disappear. Make it look like an accident. The son will be so grief-stricken he won't ask questions about his recovery." The room went dead silent. They had been planning to kill me. "Mom," Michael said, his voice shaking, "you're not safe. None of us are safe." Tommy jumped up from the bed. "We have to go to Daddy's room right now. If Sarah's parents are going to the research lab, Sarah might try to hurt Daddy to destroy the evidence." He was right. If this whole conspiracy was falling apart, Sarah might do something desperate. "Michael, call the police and tell them to meet us at David's room," I said, getting up from the bed even though I was still weak from the surgery medicine. "Tommy, bring that tablet and don't let it out of your sight." We rushed down the hospital hallways as fast as we could. My heart was pounding, but not because I was tired. I was terrified of what we might find in David's room. When we got there, the door was closed and the lights were off. That was strange. David's room was never dark during the day. Michael slowly opened the door and peered inside. "David, are you awake?" No answer. Tommy squeezed my hand tight. "Grandma, I'm scared." "It's okay, sweetheart. We're going to save your daddy." Michael flipped on the lights, and what we saw made my heart nearly stop. David was lying in his bed, but he looked different. His skin was gray, and there was a strange empty medicine bottle on his nightstand. Sarah was nowhere to be seen, but there was a note on the pillow next to David's head. Michael grabbed the note and read it out loud. "I'm sorry. I couldn't live with what I've done. David has taken enough medicine to end his suffering. By the time you read this, it will be too late. Sarah." "No," Tommy screamed, running to his father's bed.
"Daddy.
"Wake up. Please wake up." But David wasn't moving. His breathing was so shallow, I could barely see his chest rising and falling. Sarah had given David an overdose and tried to make it look like suicide. We had found the evidence we needed, but we might be too late to save the person who mattered most. "Call the doctors now," I screamed, rushing to David's bedside. My son's lips were turning blue, and his breathing was getting slower and slower. Michael was already pressing the emergency button while talking frantically into his phone. "We need paramedics in room 314 immediately. Possible drug overdose." Tommy was crying and shaking his father's arm. "Daddy, please wake up. Please don't die." Within seconds, nurses and doctors came running into the room. Dr. Martinez was right behind them, still wearing his surgical scrubs from our interrupted operation. "What happened?" Dr. Martinez asked, checking David's pulse and looking at his eyes with a small flashlight. "We think his wife gave him an overdose," I said, handing him the fake suicide note. "She's trying to make it look like he killed himself." Dr. Martinez read the note quickly, then tossed it aside. "Get me activated charcoal and prepare for stomach pumping," he called to the nurses. And I want a full blood panel immediately. While the medical team worked on David, Michael was taking pictures of everything in the room with his phone. The empty medicine bottle, the fake note, even the glass of water on the nightstand. Tommy, do you have any recordings of Sarah giving your dad medicine? I asked. Tommy nodded, wiping his tears. I recorded her 2 nights ago. She was giving him way more pills than usual and telling him they were special vitamins to help him feel better. He played the recording on his tablet. We could hear Sarah's voice clearly. Here, David, take all of these. The doctor said you need extra medicine tonight because your blood work was so bad. Then David's weak voice. This seems like a lot of pills, Sarah. Are you sure this is right? Trust me, honey, Sarah's recorded voice replied. I talked to Dr. Martinez myself. He wants you to take everything in this cup. Dr. Martinez looked up from treating David. I never told her to give him any extra medicine. In fact, I specifically told her that only nurses should be administering medication. She's been lying about everything, I said, feeling angry and heartbroken at the same time. Tommy, show Dr. Martinez the other recordings. Tommy scrolled through his tablet and found the most important one. This is from 3 days ago. Sarah's talking to someone on the phone in the hallway. He pressed play, and Sarah's voice filled the room. The kidney transplant is scheduled for Friday morning, the recording said. How much of the compound should I give David the night before? A man's voice answered. Double the usual dose. We need his blood work to look critical when they take the kidney. The research team wants to see how the experimental drug affects kidney function under extreme stress. What if he doesn't survive the extra dose? Sarah asked. Then we stick with the original plan, the man replied. Harvest what we can and dispose of the body. The old woman's kidney will still be valuable for research. The entire room went silent. Even the nurses stopped what they were doing to listen. There's more, Tommy said quietly. He played another recording from yesterday. The boy is getting suspicious, Sarah's voice said. He keeps asking questions about David's medicine. Handle it, a woman's voice replied, Sarah's mother. Give the kid some of the sleep medication. Make him drowsy, so he stops paying attention. And if that doesn't work? Sarah asked. Then the kid becomes part of the cleanup, her mother said coldly. No witnesses. I felt like I was going to throw up. They've been planning to hurt Tommy too. My innocent, brave grandson who was just trying to protect his father. Tommy looked up at me with scared eyes. Grandma, what does cleanup mean? It means they're very bad people, sweetheart, I said, pulling him close. But they're not going to hurt anyone ever again. Dr. Martinez was shaking his head in disbelief. In 30 years of medicine, I have never seen anything like this. This is attempted murder, human experimentation, and organ trafficking all rolled into one. Just then, 2 police officers walked into the room, followed by a woman in a business suit. I'm Detective Rodriguez, the woman said, showing her badge. We got a call about a possible poisoning case. Michael stepped forward. Detective, it's much bigger than poisoning. These recordings prove that my brother has been used as a test subject for illegal drug experiments, and they were planning to harvest my mother's kidney for black market sale. Detective Rodriguez looked skeptical until Tommy held up his tablet. I have everything recorded, he said in his small but brave voice. All the bad things Sarah and her parents did to my daddy. The detective listened to several recordings, and her expression got more and more serious with each one. Where is Sarah now? She asked. We don't know, I admitted. She disappeared after the surgery was stopped. Detective Rodriguez spoke into her radio. I need units at Zenith Research Labs immediately. And put out a bolo for Sarah Mitchell and her parents, Robert and Linda Johnson. Tommy tugged on the detective's jacket. Detective lady, I know where they might be going. Where, sweetheart? I recorded Sarah's dad talking about a safe house where they keep other test subjects. He said it was in a warehouse by the old factory on Elm Street. Detective Rodriguez's eyes got wide. Other test subjects? Tommy nodded sadly. I think they've been hurting other people too, not just my daddy. The detective immediately called for backup units to check the warehouse. Then she knelt down next to Tommy. Son, These recordings you made might have just saved a lot of people's lives. You're a hero. Tommy looked at his father, who was starting to breathe better as the doctors worked on him. I just wanted to save my daddy. Dr. Martinez came over to us with good news. David's going to be okay. We caught the overdose in time, and we're flushing the drugs from his system. But I want to run tests to see what kind of experimental compounds they've been giving him. Will there be permanent damage? I asked, afraid of the answer. It's too early to tell, Dr. Martinez said honestly. But the fact that he's responding to treatment is very encouraging. His body is stronger than they thought. Detective Rodriguez was taking notes rapidly. Mrs. Grace, I need to ask you about the kidney donation. Did Sarah or her family pressure you into agreeing to the surgery? I thought about all the conversations, all the guilt trips, all the times Sarah had cried and begged me to save David's life. Yes, I said quietly. They made me feel like I was the only one who could save him. Like I would be a terrible mother if I didn't do it. That's called coercion, the detective said. They were manipulating you emotionally to get what they wanted. Tommy was still holding his tablet tight. Detective, there's one more recording you need to hear. It's about other families they've hurt. He played a conversation between Sarah and her father. How many test subjects do we have active right now? Sarah's father asked. 12, Sarah replied. 3 kidneys for livers, 2 hearts, and 3 full-body pharmaceutical trials. The research facility is paying us almost $500,000 total. Any problems with the families getting suspicious? One woman in Denver started asking too many questions about her husband's sudden illness, Sarah said. But we handled it. Made it look like a car accident. The room went completely silent. They weren't just criminals. They were killers who had been doing this to multiple families. Detective Rodriguez was already on her radio calling for federal backup. This is a multi-state investigation now. We're looking at murder, conspiracy, human trafficking, and illegal medical experimentation. Tommy looked up at me with tears in his eyes. Grandma, how many other daddies and grandmas did they hurt? I held him tight, not knowing what to say. But I knew one thing for sure. My brave little grandson had not only saved our family, he had probably saved dozens of other families too. The nightmare was almost over, but the fight for justice was just beginning. The secret that stopped surgery. Section 5. Justice and Healing. 2 hours later, Detective Rodriguez came back to David's room with the biggest smile I had ever seen. We got them, she announced. All of them. Tommy jumped up from his chair next to his father's bed. You caught Sarah? Sarah, her parents, and 12 other people involved in this operation, Detective Rodriguez said. Your recordings led us straight to the warehouse, and we found evidence of everything. The illegal drug testing, the organ trafficking, even documents about the other families they've hurt. I felt like a huge weight had been lifted off my shoulders. What about the other victims? We're contacting families in 6 different states, she said. Thanks to Tommy's evidence, we'll be able to help people who didn't even know they were being poisoned. David was awake now, though still weak from the overdose. When Detective Rodriguez told him everything that had happened, he couldn't believe it. Sarah was poisoning me, he whispered, his voice full of hurt and confusion. But she took such good care of me. She brought me soup and made sure I took my medicine. The medicine she was giving you was making you sick, Daddy, Tommy said gently, holding his father's hand. She was never trying to help you get better. David looked at his brave son with tears in his eyes. You saved my life, Tommy. You saved all our lives. I just listened, Tommy said quietly. When something feels wrong, we should always listen to that feeling. Dr. Martinez came in with David's latest test results. The good news is that David's kidney function is already starting to improve now that we've stopped the experimental drugs. His body is healing itself. Will he need a kidney transplant? I asked. Probably not, Dr. Martinez said with a smile. His kidneys were never actually failing, they were just being poisoned. Give him a few weeks of proper treatment, and he should make a full recovery. I started crying with relief. Not just because David would be okay, but because I realized how close we had all come to a terrible tragedy. If Tommy hadn't been so brave, so observant, So determined to protect his family, Sarah's plan would have worked perfectly. Michael put his arm around my shoulders. Mom, I owe you an apology. When you said you were worried about the surgery, I should have listened to your instincts. We all should have listened to our instincts, I said. But most importantly, we should have listened to Tommy from the beginning. Detective Rodriguez pulled up a chair next to Tommy. Tommy, because of your bravery, the FBI is shutting down a criminal organization that has been hurting families for over 3 years. You helped save dozens of people. Tommy looked thoughtful. Detective, what will happen to all the people who are getting hurt? They'll get proper medical treatment, just like your dad, she said. And the criminals will go to prison for a very long time. Over the next few days, the story got even bigger. The news reported that Zenith Research Labs was a fake company that had been conducting illegal drug experiments on unwilling patients. Sarah and her family had been recruiting victims by marrying into families, making people sick, and then stealing their organs for black market sale. The FBI found evidence that they had killed at least 6 people who had become suspicious of their activities. If Tommy hadn't spoken up when he did, our family could have been next. A week later, David was strong enough to come home from the hospital. Tommy never left his side, and David never stopped thanking his son for saving his life. You know what the hardest part is? David said to me as we sat on his porch watching Tommy play in the yard. I loved Sarah. I trusted her completely. I can't believe I was so blind. Love makes us want to see the best in people, I told him. That's not a weakness, David. That's what makes us human. The real problem was that Sarah took advantage of your love. How do I teach Tommy to trust people again after this? David asked. Tommy came running up to us, holding a butterfly that had landed on his hand. Look, Daddy. It's not scared of me. You know what, Tommy? David said, smiling at his son. I think you already know the difference between people who want to help and people who want to hurt. You figured it out when none of the adults did. I just listened to my heart, Tommy said simply. My heart told me something was wrong, so I paid attention. That night, as I tucked Tommy into bed, he asked me a question that broke my heart. Grandma Grace, will you ever trust people again? I thought about it carefully before answering. Tommy, what Sarah did was terrible. But you know what? You showed me that there are still good people in the world. Brave people who stand up for what's right, even when it's scary. Like the doctors who helped Daddy? Like the doctors like Detective Rodriguez, like Uncle Michael, I said. And most of all, like you. 6 months later, all 3 members of Sarah's family were sentenced to life in prison. The FBI shut down the entire organ trafficking ring, and 12 other families were reunited with their loved ones who had been slowly poisoned just like David. Tommy received a special award from the police department for his bravery. But more importantly, he had learned something that would help him for the rest of his life, that speaking up for what's right is always worth it, even when it's hard. David made a complete recovery and went back to work. He started dating again eventually, but this time he listened carefully to Tommy's opinion about anyone new in their lives. As for me, I learned that a mother's love should never be blind. We should love our children enough to ask hard questions and demand real answers. And we should always listen to the children in our lives because sometimes they see things more clearly than adults do. If this story touched your heart, please share it with every parent, grandparent, and family member you know. Like this video if you believe that speaking up can save lives, and don't forget to subscribe for more true stories that will open your eyes to the world around us. Remember, if something feels wrong in your family, trust that feeling. Ask questions. Demand answers. And never be afraid to speak up for the people you love, no matter how young you are or how scared you feel. Your voice might be the one that saves a life. Tommy taught me that heroes don't always wear capes. Sometimes they're just 9-year-old boys with tablets, brave enough to record the truth when everyone else is looking the other way. And sometimes the smallest voice in the room is the one telling the biggest truth of all. What would you do if you were in Tommy's situation? Let us know in the comments below, and remember to share this story with someone who needs to hear it today. This story is dedicated to all the children who speak up when adults won't listen, and to all the families who have the courage to face difficult truths together.